Welcome into episode 343 of the Sources Say podcast, your go-to Kentucky basketball and recruiting podcast on the growing KSR Podcast Network. I'm your host, Greg Radio. Very excited to be joined by Frederick Douglass's own Shawn Smith. How you doing, buddy?
Did you say 343?
My brain kind of broke as I was saying that because I was like, damn, that's a lot of freaking shows. I didn't realize that we've done that many, but here we are, buddy.
I know that you do that every episode, but I think that's the first time that's actually hit me that we're 343 episodes in. Like, man, that number's starting to really climb.
That means we're old, Shawn. That means we're getting old. We're washed. The young pups are starting to nip at our heels, and before long, we're going to be taken over by the next generation of Sources Say 2.0, whoever that may be.
And I'm rocking a party like it's 1996 shirt today. I know you and I have these matching tees, and I think I was telling you, this may be the first time that I've wore like UK apparel on this show. But then, oddly enough, the one time that I did, I wore a Mark Pope jersey. How wild is that?
Little did you know, buddy. Little did you know that our worlds were going to be flipped upside down. How long ago was that?
October when I wore that. So like, it's not like it was too long ago. Like, it was during our. It was actually the episode where we talked about Kentucky and Indiana series coming back, and here I am rocking a Mark Pope jersey, and I had no idea that.
So why'd you stop? You now have a reason to wear it every single show, and you've just decided to up and stop. I feel like this is a missed opportunity. Although I love the party like it's 1996 shirt, Goose Tees. They do just an absolutely phenomenal job. But come on, man, if you own a Mark Pope jersey, you gotta be able to rock it. When else are you gonna casually wear a Mark Pope jersey?
Yeah, you got a good point. I guess there's not many other opportunities to really wear it. I'll pull it back out.
There we go. We're looking forward to it. So it's been a freaking whirlwind, man. Lots going on in my life personally. Had a really significant loss in my family that really tore me up and kind of put me out of commission there for a minute. Still really struggling, but so apologize for kind of starting this show as late as we did. But there's still a lot to talk about. I was at Peach Jam this past weekend, obviously following Mark Pope and his staff around everywhere they went, like lost puppies, like we talked to Cody Fieger about last week. That's kind of our role now, is just kind of get the lay of the land, figure out who they're watching, who they like, who they don't like, guys that they're kind of monitoring, keeping track of before really deciding whether or not to go all in or out on them. So that's what my job was this past weekend with Peach Jam. I think we got a lot of clarity on some of their top targets, guys that they're kind of swinging for the fences for, maybe that they're not totally pursuing as hard as maybe some fans would hope. I think there's just a lot to come out of Peach Jam, just the whole recruiting cycle. I mean, it was ridiculous, Shawn. So we get there Thursday afternoon, late afternoon. Coaches are allowed to arrive starting at 6:00 on Friday. And as soon as the doors open, it's Cody Fieger and Jason Hart there for the first run of games that night. So you kind of just loosely think in your head, all right, well, Cody and Jason are going to be here. Alvin Brooks and Mark Pope probably going to be at Adidas tonight. Maybe they cut the trips in half. Brooks and Pope are at Adidas to start with and then finish at Peach Jam, and then Cody Fieger and Jason Hart flip to go to Adidas. A lot of coaches do that. They go to multiple events every weekend, but usually kind of get the lay of the land wherever they are and then kind of transfer later. So Pope starts at Adidas Friday at 6:00 on the dot. And then there's reports of him landing in Indianapolis to go see Puma up with the next 16 pro circuit. So you go, okay, well, that's kind of bizarre. So I guess he just wanted to check a box with Malachi and some of those guys, and then go, get Chris Sinak and some of those other guys up at Puma. Okay, cool, sounds good. And then I walk in on Saturday bright and early morning at 8:00 and Mark Pope is sitting there courtside with a coffee in his hand. I'm like, so Mark Pope has been 3 different stops in approximately 14 hours ish. So what this looks like. You were just on the UAA circuit. That coaches move. They travel a lot, But I've never seen anything like that. Like, there are some people that were like, oh, you're just hyperbolizing, a coach because he works hard. It's not that big of a deal that a coach is working hard. Well, A, it's a little different than what we're used to around here. B, that's going above and beyond to go to 3 different events over the course of a 14-hour period and then stay the rest of the time at Peach Jam and just, soak it all in. The note that, just so meticulous in the note taking and bouncing around from gym to gym to gym, kind of dividing and conquering with Jason Hart there. It was really, really wild to see. I know it's what you would like to see as a Kentucky fan, Shawn, seeing your head coach kind of grinding the way that he is.
Yeah, absolutely. And it is a grind. And the details that go into those weekends too, Jack, like getting from airport, rental car to facility, back to hotel, you're making phone calls and taking phone calls during that time too. I can tell you how many coaches that I talked to last week in UAA, phone calls that I had, and I had one with a D1 assistant till like 12:30 one night. So, Pope is making phone calls as well. So there's a lot that goes into it. The bouncing from city to city and then getting back to to other cities and things, like you have guys on your staff that you can kind of branch out and send 1 or 2 here, but it means a lot when the head coach is present. And I think that you're seeing a guy that's going to put in the work. It's a lot, but it's going to pay off. You're trying to put and establish your footprint on what this brand is now, Jack. And that's why it was so important, like, to get off to a good start of kind of showing your face and showing your staff and having your UK gear on. Like, now it's not weird to look and see Mark Pope and his staff in UK gear. It's not as weird to see John Calipari and his staff in Arkansas gear. At first, it was really weird. Now it's normal. But you're seeing a guy that's willing to put in the grind and do it. And I was following it, even though I wasn't at Peach Jam. I was last year. This year, like you said, I was with UAA and coaching on that circuit. But I was following you and all the updates you put out. And it's that's a staff that's really putting in the work. And they did an excellent job covering that event.
Are we just going to gloss over your UAA record this over the past week? Come on, man! Like, you deserve to pat yourself on the back for how things unfolded.
Fell a little short.
Shut up!
I now know what it's like to lose in the Final Four. Okay, so no, it was a good run. It was a really, really good run with a lot of really good kids, and obviously we'll get into UK and stuff. But just like I've got D1 kids on that group that I have with Griffin, and a lot of kids that are going to play college basketball. If we wouldn't have had a rolled ankle or to our 6'9" big, we probably had a chance to be playing in the finals of that thing. But we won 22 straight games, hadn't lost since May 5th. Won 34 games overall, lost 3 on the Under Armour Ice circuit. Like, pretty good. And here's the cool thing about it. Every single kid is homegrown from Kentucky. Really cool. Had D1 assistants from James Madison and other schools sitting there courtside Saturday and Sunday watching us. Pretty cool thing for some in-state kids.
Yeah, it's awesome. You crushed it. We're proud of you over here. Remember, it's written in your sources say contract that wherever you land at the next level, you're stuck with us. So too bad, so sad. You're not going anywhere. You can be the head coach.
Maybe I'll land at UK. You never know. Like, who knows?
Hey, it's going to be a heck of a conflict of interest. But hey, I'm happy to have that conversation with Pope if that day comes. Sorry, man, you're stuck with us. So let's talk about some of the just kind of big picture things that I learned. Talking to different people, parents, coaches, AAU programs, just throughout the weekend, just kind of how Kentucky operates. Guys that Kentucky is in deep on, guys that they're kind of maybe trending away from. You learned a lot. And I think one of the biggest picture takeaways, Shawn, is that these high school kids are just point blank period asking for an arm and a leg. That it's gotten to the point where the value in college basketball the last couple cycles has been in the transfer portal, where you can get, grad transfers, 5th-year guys, 4th-year guys for expensive. I mean, they come at a premium, but you know exactly what you're getting. You can get an All-American caliber player for $1 million. You loosely just kind of think of that in your mind. And then you talk to different guys that handle some of these recruitments with top 10, top 20, top 30, top 40 kids. In the numbers that you hear associated with these kids and what they're kind of running asking prices, it kind of blew my mind. Like kids that I personally don't think are ready to make an impact at the highest of high levels at the collegiate level, asking for what an All-American made this cycle. Like, I mean, what guys that are All-Americans that decided to return to college basketball this season for NIL purposes instead of going to the draft, these kids that are 17 years old, not just AJ Dibansa, like if he asked for it, obviously that's something you expect, but some of the guys further down the list, the numbers associated with them are just like, all right, man. So it kind of got back to me through various outlets and different, different sources about that Kentucky, it's gotten back to Kentucky and they've noticed and they've had some of these conversations where they kind of have to have those conversations internally about, is this really what we want to do? Like, do we really want to be pursuing some of these guys and fronting the money that it's going to cost to pay for them? Like, are they really good enough? Like, yes, it's a really good class with some unbelievable top end talent in 2025 and beyond. But like, are we going to sacrifice financial flexibility with getting guarantees in the portal for guys that we like, but maybe not love? So that was a theme that popped up. I mean, 4 or 5 different conversations I had with guys that like, yeah, they like a lot of them, but man, the ones they love are going to cost, I mean, a lot of money. So you as a coach, you kind of understanding that, how would you approach the high school class and how Pope should kind of operate with money management and saying, okay, what is what's the biggest bang for your buck that you can get when you're trying to assemble a roster in today's college basketball world?
It's tough and it's different for every program, right? Like in this is the one thing that I think has benefited me the most from actually getting inside and coaching on a circuit and getting involved and talking to so many coaches around the country. It's different depending on what program you're at. Your budget's different, right? But at Kentucky, we know that budget shouldn't be an issue. You should have money there on the basketball side for sure when it comes to your NIL funds and everything that you have to do. But to me, Jack, I think Cody Figures said it last week when he was talking about how they're wanting to do, and it's something me and you kind of speculated about all spring and summer, is what their blueprint was going to look like in recruiting. Is it going to be going all in on top 20 players like it has been here? That's not going to be the case anymore. And I don't think it's going to be able to be the case for a lot of schools anymore. I think you're going to see some distribution here with some guys going here because money is going to be available that maybe is not available at this school. So to me at Kentucky, and it could be different depending on what class we're talking about. Like you and I knew a year ago at Peach Jam that these classes coming up were going to be some of the most coveted players because the talent is unbelievable at the top.
Mm-hmm.
Like the difference at the top now, had you taken those guys and put them in this class that just went through college basketball, Jack, a lot of guys would have been pushed out much lower. You still would have had your Reed Shepherds, but it would have changed the dynamic of what we're talking about with the way the freshman class was across the country. So to me, you got to be able to identify who are your top two and how much money are you willing to have on the table for those top two guys. And this is where I think NIL for me, when it was first being introduced, I think I misinterpreted how it was going to be played out. Like I think I thought that everybody was going to get to campus and then it was up to how good they were, that they were going to kind of market themselves and have opportunities. But no, you're having to talk NIL before you even get this kid on campus. I didn't see that coming, I think. College coaches that I talked to, I talked to a few when I was in Atlanta a couple weekends ago. They were like, man, you do this and you talk to this kid for a while, but they don't even want to talk to you if you've not even threw out an NIL number. Like they don't even have a conversation with you. It's not about what can you give me on the floor. And this is not even guys that are in the top 50, Jack. These are guys that are maybe even outside the top 100. It's all become a, where can I make the most money right now? And it's not as much about what the next step is. It's what can I do here? Is that the case for guys in the top half that we know are going to be top 10 draft picks? I don't know. But if I'm Pope, I'm going to trust my evaluations. That's what he's been so good at as a coach. I think this staff is pieced together to evaluate and maybe get some diamonds in the rough, find those hidden gems. The evaluation tool is going to be the most important and critical piece to what Kentucky does as a roster moving forward, in my opinion. They're going to evaluate and find guys that fit. It's going to look different. Maybe you're not going to have number 1, number 2 recruiting classes anymore. Maybe you settle for number 5, number 6, number 7. But the evaluation and being able to retain, those are, to me, those are the more important areas than what Kentucky does at the top of NIL.
Yeah.
You still got to do it, right? Like you still got to dip your toe in it. If you don't, you're going to get left behind at that part.
And that's where some tough conversations are going to have to be had, because there are some guys that, fans love and across the board. Like, it's a really tough pill to swallow. I mean, look at a guy like AJ Dybantsa. That's where the conversation starts, because he is going to be an NIL driven. The reason why BYU is even the reason why AJ knows who BYU is, where BYU is, and who the head coach is because of NIL. Like, make no mistake about it. He didn't grow up dreaming of playing college basketball in Provo. He grew up dreaming of making a ton of money at the collegiate level and becoming a superstar en route to being number 1 pick. Like, let's call a spade here. The reason why BYU is rumored as such a realistic option for him, and SMU and some of these other programs that you wouldn't expect to be associated with the number 1 recruit in the country, is because of money. The number thrown around at Peach Jam with AJ is upward of $3 million. So when you think of that, and we talked about that, just kind of like, what do you think that number is going to be just long term? That's the kind of one that coaches interested in him are kind of looking at and going, whew, man, that kid can play. He's a generational superstar, but $3 million is 50% of our recruiting budget for a good NIL program. Like, is it worth it to be able to be really, really limited elsewhere? And AJ is going to want to play with talented guys. So if you put another superstar next to him that costs 1.5 or one couple that costs 1, then you're going to be kind of loading up the back end of your roster with scrubs. So it just kind of creates this dynamic of what is important if you are Mark Pope. If you are, is that something you pursue? And I think for the optics, you kind of have to at least be in the race. You gotta get a visit. You gotta prove that, like, hey, this is a blue chip kid. We're in on blue chip kids because we're a blue chip program. Like, you got to be able to do that. But, like, is it make or break for Pope to be able to land AJ Dybantsa? I don't think so. It's kind of like the Jaden Quaintance recruitment, where it was just so money heavy that, like, would it have been that big of a statement for Pope to land Quaintance in this cycle? I mean, no, because all it took was, hitting the right dollar figure and meeting some of the personal requests on their side. And, like, that would have been an easy get, but it also, that's the problem that they have to deal with and how they juggle what is important to them. So you're right. That's why it is so freaking crucial for them to nail the evaluation part of this. And that's why, you hear really, really positive momentum with guys like Braylon Mullins, who plays with Malachi Moreno, who UK is also trending really, really heavily on right now. Guys that aren't necessarily top 5, top 10 recruits, but guys that they feel are fits for this program. They're pursuing both of them really, really heavily and doing, you talk to opposing coaches that are recruiting them both and saying, we're trying, but I think that Kentucky is the favorite for both of those guys right now. So they got to pick and choose. They got to hit that right, because with the cost being what it is, you can't miss, because that could really screw you over with roster management if you spend a ton of money on a guy who's not worth it.
Well, that's what I was about to say, because let's go back, and not going to bring up individual names here. There have been guys at Kentucky that have underperformed based off of what they were. It happens every single year. If you put a lot of money in those guys and they don't perform, you're making an investment that's not investing back. And that's the danger you take. That's where evaluation is so important now. AJ DeBanza, that's to me, that's a guy that I don't think that I have no concerns that he's not going to be great, regardless of where he ends up.
Like, he's a superstar. He's a guarantee.
Yes, that's a clear cut. You know what you're getting there. But this is kind of turned into, an NBA locker room or a professional locker room, right? Where not everybody makes the same amount of money. Guys are on a certain contract and making this money. This guy, maybe he's your veteran minimum. I mean, you've got to kind of distribute it throughout your roster. And I think this is the thing that's making it difficult for a lot of coaches in a lot of colleges. That's why you're seeing mid-major programs now not even recruit high school basketball. You're seeing them live off the transfer portal. There's not, like I coached 15U. There wasn't a lot of college coaches sitting at my games, even though I've got D1 kids, because they're thinking that kid's 15 years old, going to be 16. I probably don't even have to worry about recruiting them until they're 20. And it's hurting some kids. Like it's making kids go D2 or go to lower levels because they're just not getting the opportunities. So when you're at a place like Kentucky, you don't have to worry about that.
So on that note, I was sitting talking to a blue blood assistant watching a 16U game. And I said, so like, do you go into this weekend saying I got to hit 70%, 65, 70% of my games with 17U, 15 to 20% of my games with 16U, and maybe a game or two watching 15s? Like, how do you approach with your schedule? How do you kind of navigate who you watch, when you watch them? Do you load up on 17Us to begin with, and then toward the end of the weekend hit 15s whenever you can? Like, what is your process? And he was like, 90% of my games are 17Us. The only reason why I even hit 16s is usually because I have, a family connection with one guy, or this kid grew up in the state that our school is in, and I have to, for optics, be sitting here right now. I have no interest in actually recruiting this kid right now, saying you're a must-have for our class. They are only there for the optics of, well, you can't not be there. So it was really eye-opening. And like, when talking about 15s, it was like, unless this kid said, I grew up dreaming of playing for my school, I can't do it. And he grew up in the town that you're living, like in Jasper's case, when he was a 15U player for Kentucky back then. Like, it makes sense to go watch that kid's game. But for anybody else, it's just a non-starter, because, as you said, the chances of 2-3 years from now, that kid mattering in the grand scheme of things with what your recruiting plan is for portal and financial flexibility and all that stuff, it's not going to really matter. So it's just a different game, man. It just is. Every conversation starts and stops with NIL, and I think it is a turnoff for some coaches. I'm really fascinated to see how Pope navigates this, because I don't think that he's gonna, we already knew he talked pretty openly about it, where he's gonna land blue chip, McDonald's All-American talent, but he values retention. Cody Feger was on our show last week and said that values retention, values long-term experience, building from within. That's typically not going to be a top 5, top 10 recruit. So I wouldn't be shocked, Shawn, if moving forward, it's going to be a 3 to 4 high school guy class year after year after year, and loading up the core of the roster with only experience. Go get the guys that you have to get. Go get guys that you think are diamonds in the rough, where you have a really good eye for talent, and you kind of nail the evaluation on them and say, man, there's something about this kid screaming at me. We can get him at a good bargain. We can develop him over the course of a couple of years, and he's going to be a superstar for us. That's going to be the future of recruiting, I think.
It is. And I just don't see this staff taking someone that they don't think fits. Like, in the past, I feel like that there were guys on this roster at times because they needed to fill scholarships. Like, going into last summer, when they didn't have many dudes, I thought Kentucky was kind of scrambling just to make do and get some pieces. there have been guys over the last 6, 7, 8 years that I thought didn't fit this program. And I think we all knew it from day one that they didn't fit. And then it turned out that they didn't, and then they leave. Will that still happen? Naturally, yes. You will have guys leave your program, regardless if you're Kentucky, you're Duke, you're Kansas, you're Dayton. It don't matter where you're at. People are going to leave. People are going to leave because they think opportunities are better for them elsewhere. They're going to hit the portal. Like, that's a normal thing that happens in college basketball. But for the most part, I think that this staff is going to pass the evaluation test with a lot of guys. I think they're going to be picky with what they want. I don't think they're ever going to get caught up in those pamphlets that tell me so-and-so is ranked number 3 in the country, because number 3 in the country on the sheet might not be number 3 in what you need at your program. You may go down the list and find number 26 who does A, B, and C that becomes a top 5 player in your program at Kentucky and in your system. That's why I trust these guys to evaluate. And I know we're kind of in a territory here where we're maybe 1 foot in, 1 foot out when it comes to what is going on, because we've not seen them land anything via high school. You want to see them land somebody to kind of get an idea of what they're going to be able to do on the recruiting trail. I mean, I know getting Trent to flip from South Carolina to Kentucky wasn't difficult. Like, that wasn't a hard one. Now things start to get to a point to where you just don't know. There's unknowns. Who is that first guy that Kentucky gets? If they don't get Jasper Johnson, I'm going to say this: I'm not crushing the staff for it. Like, those relationships have been built with Jasper long before Mark Pope got to Kentucky. Mark Pope has had, 2 months to try to get in on that. I'm not necessarily looking at 25 as much as I am 26. Now, they need to figure some things out in 25 and kind of get some guys that they want that fit. But those relationships that are being built this summer, you've got staffs that have been building those relationships for over a year, where you just starting to now get your footprint in there with them. 26 is where I'm starting to look at. So you may still have to take more portal guys, Jack, a year from now. I don't know what it's going to look like, but I am interested to see who the first commitment is. And because they need to get something relatively soon, I think, going into the fall. They need to have something on paper, to me, with that. I think that'll ease the fans' mind when they kind of get an idea. Okay, who did you beat for this kid? What is the message coming out of this? Like, there's just a lot of unknowns right now with this.
Yeah, so let's just dive right into the order of operations, because Jasper Johnson is going to be next up. He's going to be first up, and we'll see what happens with him. He just announced his list cut. He's down to 5 schools. It's going to be Alabama, UNC, or Kentucky. I would be absolutely floored if it was either of Arkansas or Louisville. Calling a spade, I do think that Alabama and UNC hold a slight edge over Kentucky right now. And I think a big part of it is just the longstanding relationships that they've had. Talking to people around Jasper, I mean, they are relentless. They're calling every single day, to just going to the ends of the earth to try to land this kid with, if it's a financial ask, they're hitting it. If it's a, in terms of role, in terms of like what they're looking for, not being guaranteed certain minutes or shots, but painting the vision with like a tangible sample size of like, hey, guys of your archetype, guys that are similar to you, here's how they've been used in the past. Here are some of the flaws in your game. Here are some of the things we don't like about it. Here are guys in the past that have had similar issues, and here's how we fix them to catapult them into superstardom. That's what we're going to do with you. Both of those coaches, Hubert Davis and Nate Oates, have just done an unbelievable job with Jasper and saying, what do you need? We're going to make this happen. So they love Mark Pope. They think that Kentucky is a potential good fit for him. But the whole my kid's not an experiment thing is a really real thing that I think is something that just to keep in mind, that, trusting a vision is a whole lot different than trusting like actual tangible results. And that's something that Pope is having to work through with with a lot of guys. I don't think Kentucky's out. I think that they're a phone call away from being right back in it. And I think that Kentucky plans on being right in the thick of things. It's my understanding beginning of August, the schools involved are going to be submitting their kind of like, hey, here's our offer, here's what the vision is, kind of just the final pitch. They're going to take all those final pitches and use the next couple weeks after that before making a decision at the end of August. I think that third week of August is the loose timeline right now for them. Pretty firm, tight timeline actually, and we're going to know where Jasper Johnson is going into September. We'll see. I think it's really tight right now. I'm fascinated to see how they operate, knowing that he is a 5-star kid that is, comes with a 5-star cost, and how they navigate that with some of their other guard prospects. And going through some of those other things that we've talked about, in terms of getting the most bang for your buck with the system and things like that. It's just very, very complicated. Kentucky still thinks that they're right in it, but the other schools involved are kind of recruiting against one another at this point. Alabama and UNC, they think that Kentucky is third. So it's complicated. Very, very complicated, Shawn.
Well, and someone in the comments was talking that they love how we're selling mediocrity. I'm not selling anything. The only thing I've been trying to sell is patience, because there are unknowns to this, Jack. Like, it's really hard to firmly establish your blueprint when you haven't coached a game yet. It's not as difficult to sell it to fifth-year guys, because those fifth-year guys, how many of these guys that Kentucky have on the roster, this is not a bad comment, because how many of those guys are going to be drafted in the NBA draft a year from now? It's a different sell. It's a different pitch. Those guys have played college basketball. They're looking for a stylistic fit. They saw it on tape. These kids that are 16, 17, 18 years old who come into college basketball, they're going to need to see something about what Kentucky is under Mark Pope. What does this program look like? What's the atmosphere like at Rupp Arena? Are they beating the Dukes? Are they beating the Kansas? Are guys getting drafted? Like, what does that look like? Like, there's still pieces that are missing that Tom is just not on Kentucky's side at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
It will be here in a couple of months when they get into the season. What's Big Blue Madness look like? What are these things like? How are you marketing your program? Right now, you're in a holding pattern because there's not much to sell other than your vision. Well, when you put eyes with the vision and you see it, it's a little bit easier to go into 26 or even into the back end of 25. To me, it's about, if you can pull Jasper here or someone soon in August, it would be great, because then you can kind of start to sell what it could look like. If not, I'm okay with guys holding off and not making decisions until later when it comes to letting Kentucky kind of establish itself on the recruiting trail, getting some game film, seeing how these transfers do. There's still so many moving parts to this, Jack, that yes, the wheels are off the ground in Lexington, but it's still doing this. There's no reason to panic because it's not doing this. It's not nosediving. It's still climbing. Like, we've not even leveled out yet. Like, be patient. That's the only thing I'm selling is patience, not mediocrity. I'm selling patience because I'm trying to get people to see it, that there's still a lot of parts that have to play out before we really truly know what it can look like.
And you have to pay a premium for the unknown right now. Like, Kentucky in this portal cycle had to overpay for some guys because they were kind of taking a chance on Kentucky in this vision. Like, again, these guys like Pope. They love Pope. Pope's awesome. They love the program. They love the facilities. They love all of this stuff. But it's still an unknown. And that is the one thing that it just kind of creates this gap of, all right, I'm listening, but man, you got to really make it worth my while. Let's kind of put your money where your mouth is and show how much you need me to kind of create this vision for the next generation. It is kind of a, once recruits get, the best thing that could happen for Pope is he paints the vision, things go really, really well in year one, they go on a run, so that 2026 class, you get, say you get Braylon Mullins and Malachi Moreno in this early signing period. Say you land both of them, and the season is the success that you plan and hope it to be. And then in the spring, some of the bigger tier fish that go, oh man, they kind of painted me this vision in the fall, last summer, last spring, last fall. They kind of said it, and this is exactly what they said it was going to be. Now, how about all the things that they told me that I could be with this program? Now I can actually see myself in it. Like I know what that looks like. That'd be a best case scenario for Pope. You land a couple guys to not feel like you're scrambling in the last second in the spring, get a couple really, really talented guys, and then go get Tunde Yesufu in the spring. Then go get a Caleb Wilson. Go surprise everybody by landing him in the spring. He has made it abundantly clear that he is in no rush to make that decision. He wants to wait until the dust settles to kind of figure out what the landscape of the schools on his list look like. So that's one that you could go after. Chris Senack, like that's one that Pope is just drooling over. He loves. There's a reason why he made that trip all the way up to Indianapolis to go see him on the Puma circuit to open the live period. There's a reason for that. It's because he's a really, really, really talented player and loves him. So lay the early foundation, put your money where your mouth is. Maybe if you have to pay a premium on some of these guys, don't go above and beyond to overpay, but be competitive if that's what it takes to land a couple of these guys, and then win. Just win games. Go make a run. Go prove that you are the coach that we all know you can be. And then the proof is in the pudding, and you really start ramping up in 2026. Like I think 26, if everything goes as planned, 26 can be an absolute banger of a class. 25 can be really good, might just be a little bit more portal heavy, and then you kind of go get the guys that you want to get the year after because the coaching product is excellent and Kentucky is Kentucky.
Yeah, and look, this staff has a lot of guys that everybody that I've talked to, really, really likable guys that I think are going to be able to hold a room, pitch Kentucky, and get a lot of guys to buy into it. Like, they're pretty convincing when you talk to them. Like, you can sense the energy and the excitement about being at Kentucky. And I think that's kind of something that kind of bleeds throughout your entire staff when you go into homes and you recruit. Now, this summer circuit was the first piece of Kentucky under Mark Pope that we've really got. And I thought they covered it well. Just because there's no one committee right now doesn't mean that they weren't successful the last 3 months. They're establishing a brand. We are now entering an era of college basketball, college sports, where you've got established brands when it comes to money. We know in football it's easier for certain programs to get money than it is for others. In college basketball, you've got your blue bloods, Jack. But at the end of the day, each brand is changing when a new face comes in. Like, what is this new brand of Kentucky basketball? Yes, you've got your history. You've got national championships. You've got the opportunity to be on TV every single night and be on a national schedule. But what is it that makes Kentucky Kentucky under Mark Pope? It'll be something different than what made Kentucky Kentucky under John Calipari. The history and tradition's there, but what is your brand? We're still kind of trying to wait on that. And I don't know what this brand's going to be. I'll say this, I'm excited for it because I don't think that this staff is going to miss. I truly think that they are dialed in. I think that they have a plan on what they want to do. Maybe they're not going to reveal every little thing to us. Retention is where I think the core of it's going to be. And I think there are guys on this roster right now. I know there's a lot of super seniors, but when you look at that next pool of kids that are on this roster and players, you can see a lot of those guys possibly back next year to kind of be that foundation to kind of build around in recruiting. And then you go to the portal and get some guys and get some faces there. Like, it's a transition thing to where I don't think until the calendar turns to 25 that we're really going to know what it really looks like in Lexington. You want to see what they do on the floor. You want to see them host official visits and guys in the stands and what's the atmosphere like at Rupp Arena. I think the atmosphere is going to be great. Like, I think there's going to be so much juice in that building early in the season. And Big Blue Madness, I think Pope and them are going to go all out, Jack. And I think they're going to really sell this program and kind of fully get that flight going, like that trajectory continue going upward.
Just get yourself in striking distance. That is Pope's job right now, and that's what they're doing right now. Evaluate the heck out of these guys. They are leaving no stone unturned, which is what makes me feel really confident about their evaluation. Like you said, they're not just going to the recruiting rankings and saying, I'm gonna send texts to the top 20 kids in the country. That's not what they're doing. I mean, they were at the NCAA College Basketball Academy this past week, seeing some international talent that a lot of guys have never heard of, guys that have been making their own individual splashes in their own realm, but like not on the national stage. They're watching those guys closely. I mean, you had Kentucky in conversations with Big Julius from New Zealand for after the global games. Like, that he's, I don't think they're going to end up going after him and pursuing him the way they thought. There were some transcript issues, is my understanding, that just wasn't the right fit with some of the things that they were looking for. But very kind of similar thing where they were looking high and low and everywhere in between to try to find, for that 13th spot as a reclass guy. And another note on that, I think they have talked to more people than I think the general public knows and what's been reported. Talked to somebody at Peach Jam that said that they were about to land a reclass kid, an international reclass kid, for coming from 25 to 24. And when they kind of got deep into the process about it, they realized that he couldn't get the transcripts in order and couldn't be a reclass to 24. And they kind of had to part ways from there and say, hey, maybe we'll circle back next cycle, but not going to work out this time. And nobody had any idea who that kid even was. So they're doing their digging and they're doing their due diligence. I just don't think it's going to pay off in the short term because they don't have the sample size built up. But in the long term, starting that 26 cycle and the guys that stick around to the spring, I do think that they're going to be able to hit the ground running. And even for like the 26 reclasses to 25, that's something to monitor as well, because you put yourself in position with those guys for next summer, next Peach Jam, the guys that are trying to reclass right now, they've seen what this upcoming season is going to be for Kentucky. So the payoff is going to be there.
Well, it may not be the best comparison, but when you get here, like, listen, entirely new hall, every single face. Travis Perry, you can kind of count from Cal, like he was already committed, signed, and things, but that was one that was already there. So Jackie, you come in and I mean, you probably compare it to planting some crops, right? Like you get your soil ready. You go out and get in the transfer portal and try to get a roster together.
Give me your gardening tips, buddy.
And you go out there and you
fertilize, baby. Fertilize.
You plant the seeds throughout the spring and the summer, and now we're just hoping for rain, right? Like you're preparing for rain. Now you just need it to rain a little bit. Well, the rain's not coming to me until you get into the season and you start kind of really showcasing your program. Get that thing on a national level on TV. And let's see what Mark Pope Kentucky basketball is about. And when you get that, I think you get results in every area of your program. But they've done the preparation. Now you just got to trust it and trust your system, and let's see how it plays out. And look, you're going to have opportunities. Kentucky and Duke early in the season, I'm telling you, it's a massive opportunity for Mark Pope. You go out and you beat Duke early. Oh boy, man, what could that do for you? You just can't go lose by 40, and I don't think they will. I think that this is a roster. It would not shock me. I know they're flying under the radar a little bit. It wouldn't shock me if Kentucky goes to that game and beats Duke early in the season with a lot of new faces. It would not shock me. You got Cooper Flagg. But you got Kentucky there. I think, Jack, that I just think that this is a team that they're veteran heavy, and I think they're going to go out with something to prove. And that's a big national spotlight for this program early in the season. Big one to get off the ground for Pope. You can't, to me, you can lose that one, but you got to be competitive. You can't lose to John Calipari in Arkansas coming to Rupp Arena. That's one that I think you can't lose this year.
And I do think, man, that if you can, like, if you can say you land Jasper, say you land Malachi, say you land Braylon Mullins in this cycle, and then you say, we just need one swing for the fences in the spring. We just need one more guy. We're going to fill out the rest with portal guys. I mean, then you can just say, man, if we do beat Duke, we do beat Arkansas, we do win some of these marquee games and kind of put our money where our mouth is and prove that we can be the team that we kind of voice ourselves. then maybe you do land a Caleb Wilson. Maybe then you do land a Chris Sinak. Maybe you do get a Nate Emmett. Like, there are guys that they love. They're just, Tunde Yesufu is a great example of that. Like, I think he loves the pitch, but he grew up a kind of, rooting for John Calipari's Kentucky. He's receptive to Pope's pitch, but it is kind of one of those deals where it's like, but do we, can we trust him? That could be that would be a huge get for Kentucky to be able to land him. And I don't think it's limited. Obviously, AJ Debbanza that's the one. If you can land him, then all bets are off for the future of the program. That's a program changing get. But kind of sell your vision a little harder, maybe overspend a little bit right now if it means that you can kind of single down your search in the spring to just push your chips on one guy and say, you're our one. Let's close out this class and see what happens. So they're in a good spot. They're in striking distance for a lot of guys. I know it's kind of scary that they're not getting a ton of traction with, oh my gosh, Malachi's the only real guy publicly that you can say Kentucky's the overwhelming favorite to land him. He's really the only guy right now. Everybody else, Jasper, Braylon Mullins, Tunde Yesufu, some of these other guys, they're kind of, one of the favorites, but they're not the favorite. And I think that's scary to some people, but they're in striking distance for 10. They're in the ballpark with a lot of guys. And I think that's going to pay off, assuming things go the way they want it to when the season starts.
Sorry, I was laughing. Somebody texted me and said, we've seen you with dumbbells with Pat Kelsey on them. Now we're going to see you in farmer clothes. It's a straw in my mouth.
Oh goodness! All right, let's move on.
Lexington, preparing for rain.
Let's move on a little bit. I talked, looking at our subjects, we talked a little bit about the 13th spot. I don't think it's going to go to Big Julius. I wouldn't be shocked if it's not used. I know Pope has been outspoken about it publicly. Fieger's been outspoken about it being used at some point. But like I said, they're coming across some guys that they like, but are wanting too much. Like, pretty transparent that, like a Jeremiah Fierce. They liked him, talked to him, reached out, said, hey, what would this look like? But he wanted to play right away. He wanted to reclass and play right away, play a big role immediately. Kentucky said that's just not something that we can offer right now because we got a really, really good group, and they parted ways. Will Riley, my understanding that they liked him, but he wanted to be the guy, ended up being able to be that guy at Illinois and got a role that Kentucky just wasn't willing to offer right now. So the hope is still that they find a project. They want a project piece for that 13th spot who can come in, they can develop over the course of a couple of years, be a homegrown talent and, internally, program grown talent and fill out the roster that way. But if that guy doesn't exist, or, people that think that they can reclass the way they have with some of the other guys they've experienced and they can't, then I think they're totally content with not using that 13 spot. Maybe something pops up in January. They don't want to use it just for the sake of using it. So that's one to keep a very close eye on. Let's kind of shift gears just a little bit because it was a big couple of weeks, Shawn, with La Familia coming to town. That was really cool, kind of seeing the updates that came out of the Joe Kraft Center and Rupp Arena when they had their head-to-head practices and on-court battles. That first night went to La Familia squad. It's my understanding it was kind of like a simulated half-court, two halves of half-court basketball in the Joe Kraft Center, and La Familia absolutely destroyed the current Kentucky team. Just ran them off the floor, did not go well. And then the next night at Rupp Arena, La Familia got their butt kicked, and Kentucky looked really, really good. The guys that I talked to that were in attendance and watched it unfold said that this squad, they got some stuff to it. That just it's the movement, it's the off ball movement, and just the chemistry and as crisp as things are right now in July. It does kind of have people dreaming big about what they could look like in October, November, and beyond. So. Pretty impressive for me. I understand that these guys are washed for today's era in college and NBA standards. Still very, very talented, but not who they used to be, obviously. But I think it's pretty big statement for them to go play the way they did at Rupp Arena and win the way they were able to.
Yeah, you mean the older guys performed better in the half court setting than they did the full court setting?
They sure did.
A lot of length too with that group, especially with Willie Cauley-Stein. But no, I mean, La Familia has been fun, right? Like,
dude, it's been so freaking awesome.
I wish that I could have gone. I've not been able to because we had a fundraiser the other day, and then we've with some other things and stuff with basketball priorities there. But I'll say this. BBN continues to prove that if you give them something, it doesn't matter what month of the year it is, they're going to invest in it and they're going to support it if it's a good product. And Team La Familia has been a good product. It's cool to see Tyler Eulis over there coaching. He's not just standing there. He's actually coaching and coaching these guys up. And I'll say this. How hard do you think it is to come in and kind of command the room with guys that you played with?
Are older than you. Yeah.
So, when I got into coaching, I started coaching a year removed from high school, and I started coaching guys that were my teammates. They looked at me like I had two heads. Now, these are professionals, I know, but I think there's such a respect for Tyler Eulis that I think it's easy, and I think all these guys are having fun with it. But look, they're competing, and there's going to be some intensity Monday night at 9 o'clock. Like, this is fun. Like, we're getting Kentucky and Louisville in late July.
Dude, it's so cool. And I talked to Travis Perry about it yesterday. He was like, I don't think people understand what it's like to be a kid from the state. Like, it's like me being a kid from the state of Kentucky and watching them in the peak of their career. I mean, Aaron Harrison shots, the dunks from Willie Cauley-Stein, the toughness and grittiness that, Tyler Eulis and Eric Bledsoe showed. And, just all of these guys that are iconic figures in the grand scheme of Kentucky basketball. And then have them be back here. Obviously me just watching up close, being at media day, being at the, practice and, seeing them at the game and being on the floor with them, watching them warm up and seeing them. It was just, it brings you back to where you were when they played here. It brought me back to, the John Wall dance. It brought me back to, that Louisville game, DeMarcus Cousins throwing the elbow on Jared Swapshire and you all of those memories that are in your head, Willie Cauley-Stein, pinning that Arkansas dude shot on the backboard and staring him down. All of those things just come rushing back. And you're like, man, this is the coolest thing on the planet. And Travis Perry was like, yeah, imagine playing against it. Imagine, practicing against them at Rupp Arena and Eric Bledsoe hit me with a spin move and going straight into my chest and me getting thrown back and going, damn, that was Eric Bledsoe. It's such a cool, larger than life thing for the current players, especially like Trent Noah and Travis Perry, because they've grown up with it. But I mean, Eric Bledsoe's a 12-year NBA vet. That's a guy. Amari Williams said that watching Willie Cauley-Stein over the years and knowing who he is, first team All-American, defensive player of the year, all that, hey, I want to model my game after him after just seeing him at La Familia, because I know the impact that he was able to make at Kentucky. I want to make something similar. This is just a really, really big thing and a really cool thing that for us to get Kentucky, Louisville in late July with so much, so many of the figures of the, Eric Bledsoe getting into it with Reginald Delk 5 seconds into the game in the 09 matchup with them. And you just go through all the memories, Willie Cauley-Stein getting that steal and sending Montrezl Harrell into the stands and then dunking in that game, the eye bleeding with Tyler Eulis. We just go down a list. So many of these memories, we get to relive them again at Freedom Hall of all places. So I'll be there. I cannot wait. It's going to be an absolute blast. And fans, if you have not bought tickets yet, they are going very, very quickly. 10,000 plus have already been sold, already broke the TBT record for what, TBT record was like 7K plus. We're already at 10K plus. Sell that thing out. Let's fill this thing up. Let's paint Freedom Hall blue and let's do this thing the right way.
And I'm confident Kentucky's going to win for one reason. You got the card killer leading the charge.
Did you see his Instagram? Did you see what he posted on Instagram?
I haven't seen it.
So he posted on his Instagram story. Some of the people affiliated with Louisville were like tagging him and going like, "It's going to be must see TV at Freedom Hall," and like he added that to his story and quoted and was just like, "You guys do know what my nickname is, right? Like you guys do understand that this is what I do. I am the card killer. I'm not going to take this matchup lightly." So man, I believe you. I think it's going to be a fun matchup, but I think it's going to be one that the Kentucky boys are able to pull out.
And on another note, on just La Familia in general, I think the timing of this was perfect, because I think when it all happened and you switch and you have the coaching change and Cal goes to Arkansas and you got a new face coming in, you kind of want to see, what's the relationship like with the guys that played for Cal for 15 years in Lexington. I think it's so cool to see so many from different teams here. You got Nate Sestina from the back end of it, Kellen Grady, all the way to the beginning. You got Eric Bledsoe. You got the guys that were a core part of it in the middle with the Harrison twins, Willie Cauley-Stein, and we know Tyler Eulis there. Like there's so many different teams put together into this, and it's been cool to kind of see them enjoy being back. And that Kentucky basketball is not about who the head coach was. It's about BBN. It's about being here and experiencing it and being a part of it. Once you go through it, you're a part of it for life, regardless of who you played for. So I think that it was like perfect timing to kind of get La Familia here to kind of bridge the gap between era to new era. Then Mark Pope sitting courtside in a La Familia jersey the other night. Like, well, you talk about a guy that commands the room too, right? Like he has so much energy about him that I feel like it's the same energy every single time that he gets a chance to rep Kentucky, and you can just tell that guy's having the time of his life.
And Jasper was there. That was pretty cool to, bunch of special guests. Rajon Rondo was there. Like, could you imagine and I heard actually that John Wall was like kind of close to committing this year, and that next year he's going to be pretty serious about participating. But could you imagine if you're able to get Rajon Rondo, John Wall, DeMarcus Cousins, you swung for the fences with some of these guys, but to get the cream of the crop, like DeMarcus Cousins would average 35 and 20 in TBT. Like if Karam Cantor is averaging 22 and 9 right now, and Karam's a dog, Karam is a hooper, DeMarcus Cousins is eating up these opponents, chewing them up and spitting them out on the floor. Like that's what would happen, unfortunately, to these poor souls. And I am desperate. I am praying that he comes to his senses and makes it happen this next cycle. And I mean, make Duran Lamb figure out a way to get him out there. I know it sucked with the contract issue that popped up with Marcus Teague and Reed Travis. I think Reed Travis would just absolutely demolish the competition in this. But if they do this, then they are doing this right. But if they're able to win this and show that, like, hey, this is a cool thing, the fan support's awesome, it opens the door for more opportunities to come back, make some side money with autograph signings and things like that, like there is a long-term benefit to kind of keeping this thing moving and bridging the gap between the generations. That kind of feels like a taboo topic right now, where when you have guys outspoken like Eric Bledsoe saying, I love Mark Pope, man, energy is awesome. The Harrison twins, love Mark Pope, energy is awesome. We met the team. Lamont Butler showed Eric Bledsoe a picture of him when he was 10 years old, with Bledsoe playing for the Phoenix Suns, meeting together and taking a picture together. Like little things like that. Like this is a really cool thing that we could kind of keep moving forward with the bigger and better and best talent that Kentucky has had over the years. If they win this, I think it's going to be a kind of a long-term thing that we see just to kind of keep the train moving forward between the generation gap.
Haven't been to a Final Four in 9 years. They can get back there in a different form with a win on Monday. And I know people are invested. They've been invested in La Familia, but I think the buzz going into Monday, I think there's going to be a lot more, just because, look, it's Kentucky Louisville. Every time you get a chance to beat Louisville, you go all out. and with nothing else competing with it, I know the Olympics and things are starting, but this is a big one Monday night.
Does it mean anything that this Kentucky team was seeing how La Familia has played against TBT competition? Does it mean anything that they were able to win the way they were and how they won? Because it wasn't necessarily just the shots that they hit that led to the blowout. It was how they were able to do it with the people that you talked to that were there at that practice at Rupp. That it was the how and the structure and the reads and the off ball movement and the cutting and slashing, and they ran La Familia off the floor. Does that mean something to you, Shawn?
It does, and I think you sent me the highlights, right? And we were talking about them. Yeah, we talked back and forth about some things, and I think it was pretty telling just looking at highlights. Obviously, we didn't get to see a full game or anything, but I think there were a lot of things that stood out to me from that game. Just from how long were the highlights? Maybe a minute and a half on Twitter.
Yeah.
Amari Williams made a lot of good reads and a lot of good passes out of that 5 spot. I thought that was really cool to see. And he's a guy that I think is going to emerge. And to me, that's my pick to take that spot that they're going to need offensively and then still anchor it defensively. But you see Kirk Risa making some really good plays and read. You saw the get action that we talked about. Guy goes under, you stop and rise, guy overplays, you back cut. Like, they're making those reads and they're making them early. That's just playing basketball. Like, these guys have played so much basketball that I think the transition to Mark Pope is actually going to be effortless when it comes to doing that part of the game. How in depth do they go at Kentucky probably remains to be seen. But those initial 3 to 4 reads that you have the options to make, I think they got high IQ guys that are going to make those reads correctly more often than they don't make them correctly. But I do think that there is something to it. I think if anything, it gives this group confidence to be like, man, we're playing really well together against current pros and former pros. What can we be when we get some actual fall practice under our belt too? So, I mean, I'd much rather them win than lose in that. So I'm excited to see this Kentucky team in a competitive setting at some point. Like, I'm looking forward to exhibition schedule and actually seeing what these guys look like, Jack.
Yep. And I believe Darius Acuff just committed to Arkansas. Yeah, but as expected, a guy that
Arkansas fans are going to be going crazy over that one.
Yeah, a kid that very likely would have ended up at Kentucky had Coach Cal still been here. But it is just different, kind of seeing the identity of guys that Pope is going after too, because like there was a very real mutual breakup between Acuff and Pope once things got rolling between the two. And it was both sides. It was Acuff saying that, I'm a Cal guy, I'm not a Kentucky guy. That's fair. But Pope also wanting, guys that kind of fit his system and gearing himself toward those guys, that it was easy to be a mutual pill to swallow for both sides. So, hey, that's going to be the future moving forward. We're going to see a whole lot of top 10, top 15, top 20 kids. However long Cal ends up in Fayetteville, that still remains very much to be seen, but he'll be adding that type of talent.
That's the other thing that you're having to get some separation from, right? Like, what John Calipari recruited at Kentucky, like Acuff and these other guys, those relationships were established. Mm-hmm. And I mean, you heard I'm a Cal guy, not a Kentucky guy. That's true. I mean, we know that. So to me, it's about getting ground between that too, to where now as you start to key in on targets, it is your approach. It is Kentucky basketball from your angle and nobody else's angle influenced it. I think that's important too, to kind of get rolling in recruiting, is just to get some ground between it. But they got to figure out, and I trust them too, who are going to be the first 1 to 2 guys that commit via the high school route to Mark Pope. Mm-hmm. And is it a splash? Is it something that gets the fan base excited? Do we look on paper and on film and see, man, that guy really fits because he does what so-and-so does in the system? That's the things you're going to be able to see, the familiarity and how their games kind of transition and translate to not just college basketball, but Kentucky basketball and the brand that they're going to play now.
Yeah. I think fortunately we won't have to wait very long. We're going to learn the fate with Jasper very, very soon. We're less than a month away from his commitment. So we'll see if Kentucky closes, how they choose to close. That was going to be interesting. That one is going to be one that I think kind of changes their trajectory moving forward with guys like, Michael Brown, Caden Lewis. Like there are other guys that they're in on that are kind of having to play the waiting game of just how seriously are we going to go all in with it. But those guys also have ties elsewhere and, things that could bring them, push them to other programs and, apparel ties and, Michael Brown kind of being an Adidas guy and Caden Lewis, Northeast, UConn. There are different things that kind of push, Chris Senack being LSU kind of emerging as an early favorite for him for local ties. It's just you're working against some other guys' recruiting pitches. And so I'm glad that we're going to learn sooner rather than later on Jasper, because I think that's going to kind of set off a domino effect of, all right, well, if we're not going to land the top 10 in-state kid that's in our backyard, we got to make a splash for optics. We got to, because it is going to be a PR hit, whether you love Jasper, whether you hate Jasper as a player, he's a polarizing talent. I think no matter what, optics are going to be really important for Mark Pope with how he kind of navigates that moving forward, where if you don't land him, especially losing him to another blue blood, especially losing him to an SEC rival, I think he's going to have to make a quick pivot and find somebody to replace him in a hurry. But I'm personally hoping that they seal the deal on him, because I love Jasper, and I think it's important to keep him home. So we'll see what happens. We'll find that out in the next couple of weeks. We will keep you guys updated as always. Any last minute things that we want to hit, Shawn, before we wrap this thing up?
No, I know we might end up getting another film episode in.
Would love to do that. Yes.
There was so much to add to what we did that there's still a lot to kind of go through.
We're going to do a film episode, and we're also going to have a very special live in-person appearance at the Kentucky Roadshow shop with Jimmy Mahan, very close buddy of mine. I think, for my money, the coolest venue in Lexington, bar none. It's a museum that Kentucky fans just have to witness for themselves. So we're going to be there. We're going to kind of dig into the artifacts that he has there that would have every Kentucky fan on planet Earth drooling. If they were able to see that with their own two eyes, memorabilia, jerseys, signatures, shoes, just history. It is truly a museum that we want to be able to kind of put on under a microscope and really dig in and see everything going on. We're going to do that shortly. We talked about next week, but we'll talk with Jimmy, get something scheduled. We can't wait to have him on and kind of reminisce a little bit, go down memory lane and just kind of see where that show takes us. It's going to be a blast. So we have a lot of fun stuff going. We're still in the docket with the Mark Pope at some point to join this show. We're still going to keep our assistant series moving forward. So plenty of cool stuff coming up on Sources Say as we inch closer and closer to college basketball season. Cannot wait. The season is right in front of us. Mark Pope debut is right in front of us. It's going to be a heck of a wild ride one way or another. So we can't wait for you guys to follow along with us. Jack Pilgrim here. You can find me on Twitter at Jack Pilgrim KSR. Go subscribe to KSR Plus. Make sure you're subscribed right here on the KSR YouTube page. Shawn, where can fans find your work?
Thank you, Daniel, for putting that up there, because remember when I used to have trouble remembering my X handle? It's @_Coach S. Smith.
And on the court with Frederick Douglass, obviously.
Yes, on the court. Very excited about going back there for another year, by the way. Like, I know we've not really talked about that, but very excited to stay in Lexington, remain in Lexington, and go back somewhere for a second season with a new staff.
Yeah, it's going to be a blast. We're excited to follow along with it. And we know you're going to crush it as always, just as you did in your first run with them. So make sure you follow along there. Make sure you follow along with us. We'll be back next time for another Jam Packed Sources Say podcast. We will see you then.